the Beyond Sleep Training podcast, a podcast dedicated to sharing real tales of how people have managed sleep in their family outside of sleep training culture. Because sleep looks different with a baby in the house. And because every family is different, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to take. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is being recorded, the Kalkadoon people. I pay my respects to the elders of this nation and the many other nations our guests reside in from the past, present and emerging. We honour Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and the unique cultural and spiritual relationships to the land, water and seas, as well as their rich contributions to society, including the birthing and nurturing of children. Welcome back to the Beyond Sleep Training podcast. I'm your host, Carly Grubb, and this week on our episode, we welcome Dr. Greer Kirshenbaum. Greer is a neuroscientist, an infant and family sleep expert, and a doula, just because, you know, all those things work together so beautifully. And she has a passion that is actually transforming many lives around the world right now through her work on nurture neuroscience. I have long been a fan of Greer's work on nurture neuroscience. She's got Facebook pages, Instagram pages, and an amazingly informative website because Greer really appreciates that early life experience in pregnancy, birth, and infancy really has so much power in shaping a baby's brain. So thanks for coming on the show, Greer.
Thank you so much for having me, Carly. I have to say, in the very beginning of my work in this area too, the Beyond Sleep Training Project was like one of these things. I was like, you guys and Tracy Castles, I was like, yes, there's people doing this amazing work. So Yay. You were so inspirational to me in the beginning.
So were we around when you had your first babe, or did that kind of when did you have your baby?
It was I was working in a lab. And now I think I just had my 6th year anniversary of leaving. And it was sort of towards the end where I was looking forward to what I was going to do next. And I just, was always so interested in helping mental health in populations. And the early life work is so strong and so convincing. And everyone around me was having a baby. And I was like, nobody knows about this stuff. And that was my inspiration. I was like, I need to just write a book. That was like my first thing. I was like, I need to write a book and tell everyone about all this information. And so I am finally writing it. Yay! I'm very excited about. But that led me into doing tons of research where I found out what doulas were and then trained as a doula, but also, followed you and your work that whole time as well. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're actually going to hear a bit more about your story and how you came to handle sleep with your little family. But do you mind, just before we dive right into that, just letting us know a little bit about who's in your family?
Yeah, for sure. So it's me and my husband, Josh, and our little son, Ocean, who is now 3 years old, and our other fur baby, Cthulhu, who is a little 5-year-old fluffy white dog.
Lovely. Got to have the fur babies in the mix as well. Beautiful. Yeah. And you guys are in Canada, aren't you?
Yes. So we're in Canada now. And yeah, loving it. We're close to our family. For the beginning of my baby's life, he was born in Los Angeles. We were living there for a while. So we started our family without our close families nearby, but now we have our families close, which is really, really nice.
Amazing. And Can you tell us how did you think you were going to approach sleep before you had your baby?
Yes. So myself and my brother were both very, very high needs babies. So my mom is forever changed by that experience. And just does it anytime she has a chance to talk about me as a baby, it's the sleep stuff, right? It's like Greer would only sleep on me. Sometimes she'd sleep in a swing. I'd maybe sleep on my grandmother too. And, I'd sleep for 20 minutes periods as a young baby, wake up every 20 minutes. And my brother was really similar too. So that story and so my mom, and my dad's side of the story was we had a crib, but Greer never slept in the crib, not even once. So we did bed share. And I also chose to leave my parents' bed when I wanted. I remember that. I remember leaving. My brother had been born and there was 4 of us in the bed. And I remember this night, I think I was around 6. My mom says 8, but I think I was closer to 6, where I was like, there's no space in here. Like later, like, bye. I need my own space.
See ya.
And I remember going into my own bed and feeling like the cool sheets. And there was like so much space. And I loved it.
Starfish in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And you know what? I did actually, always go back and sleep with my parents on occasion as I grew up, even all the way up to university. But the baby stories, that was what I expected, because my mom, it was, the story has been told countless times. And I was like, okay, I'm going to probably have a baby
probably
like
gonna
that.
Be up for that.
I'm probably going to have a baby like that. And so yeah, I was lucky that I came from that approach. Like I was, sort of prepared. I knew that babies could be that way. And then, like I said, I was doing all of that research as I was leaving the lab. And then I still want to remember when I found out about sleep training, but I know at that point I was like, wow, this is not, gonna happen. Absolutely not gonna happen, and does not go along with, helping a baby's brain grow the way I, wanted, and or at least put it at risk, right? Based on the research that I was looking at. So yeah, and then I kind of got I was worried about being an activist in sleep because it was so heated, right? It was so heated. But I did help a lot of friends at the time with their babies, and that was also really helpful to sort of plan what I was going to do for a lot of ways. Like a lot of my best friends were having babies at the time. So, they would ask me and I was like, let's figure this out. Right. Like, let's, figure out how a couple could help their baby without sleep training. And that's kind of how I planned my own kind of, plan as well. So yeah, I was like, I'm not getting a crib. I'm going to bed share and be responsive. That was always my plan. Yeah.
I love that. So you sound like you were pretty prepped, like you had some realistic versions of how things could go, perhaps even more like the dramatic little sparklers. That's what you sound like you actually were as a baby yourself as well. So that's some pretty good preparation. But how did it actually go when you welcomed your son?
Yeah. So it was not what I had expected because
is it ever?
Well, yeah. So I was not what I was expected. I was not expecting to have a premature baby. I did have a premature baby. My son was born at 34 weeks, and we brought him home, and I was like, oh, I did not prepare for this. At all. And, I'm so happy to have the opportunity to talk about it with you, because the resources for families who have a premature baby and have a baby who can't sleep without contact, which my son was, they don't exist basically, right? Like James McKenna book, I read it. It was like, it's really not a good idea to bed share with a premature baby. And that was pretty much the only thing I read. So we did set up, my son had his own little sleep surface right beside me in the beginning. And I was able to just have my body right up to it and have my hand on it. Cause he would just inch over, to the side, it was like a mesh side. And then by the time and then there was no endpoint. So like to say like, oh, when might it be, safe to have him in bed? And it, when he was around term, it just wasn't even sustainable to have him beside me. He had to be sleeping like really, really close. And so I was just like, I'm accepting all the risk and going ahead with this.
I think that's the thing too, because I think that's something for people listening along at home. When it comes to the safer sleep research and the recommendations around risk reduction, they are based on what is known in current research. But the problem with current research is that there's still lots of unknown things and areas that require further study to be able to actually fully understand. And premature babies is one of those areas. So there's lots of grey spots in there where advice has to be given, because on what is actually known, it shows that there is an increased risk of SUDI for a premature baby. But there's not been enough research to be able to fully understand that, or to know if there's an endpoint for it, and if there is an endpoint, what that might look like. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of gaps in that. And so for a family of a premature baby, it's important to understand your risk like you've done. And then you have to also work with the baby that you've got. And if you've got a little koala baby, it can sometimes just be inevitable that you're still going to end up sharing sleep, because you can't physically stay awake all of the time. So you can have your safe surface prepared like you did nearby. You can aim to have them sleeping in that separate space. But if you're going to fall asleep with them, having a prepared safe surface to do that on is really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm so happy to talk about it, because there aren't that many places to talk about it. Right. And
absolutely.
I think what you guys offer in providing families with a resource for a sidecar bed, that's invaluable. Right. I don't know if anyone else is offering that resource, and that is really important for families who are in that kind of position. But yeah, my baby was a 100% koala baby. I could not even go to the bathroom
without somebody attached.
Without someone attached. Oh yeah, he was on my lap. I would go to the bathroom, bring him on my lap, go back to bed. And so we had contact sleep for the entire, beginning of his life, all the way up to nearly 8 to 10 months. Naps were all contact naps. I would lie down. In the early days, I would have him in the living room, and he would, fall asleep on me. And then later, once he was napping in bed, I would have to lie down with him. I was so productive during those naps. I would have my phone, and I wrote an entire course on my phone during those naps. But and it wasn't until a lot later, like 8-10 months, where I could leave him. Right? Otherwise, he would be waking up within 5-10 minutes. And in the early part of the night, I would put him down in bed, and he'd every single night wake up 45 minutes or an hour after, every single time. And that's kind of like when I would go to sleep. Like I would put him down, do my nighttime things, and then that wake up, I would. Yeah, that would be
That's literally how my life was too. Right? They didn't, not all three. There was definitely patches of that. And that was my time. As soon as I get the baby down, I jump in the shower so that I could guarantee I got a shower, and my husband would be on listen out for baby duty while I had a big, long, hot shower.
Yeah.
And then I'd have my pajamas on, and whenever they would wake, that next wake, that's when I would go to bed, which was usually pretty soon after, just like yours.
Yeah.
But it's a good strategy. It helps you get to bed at a reasonable hour.
Oh yeah, and I needed it. He was still was always waking frequently at night as well. At least 2 to 4 times. In the early days, and actually probably all the way up until the end. Now he's sleeping through the night. Nearly, like he wakes up, here and there. We're still bed sharing, but I would feed him, all the wakes. And he did wake up, pretty regularly until about 2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fairly typical of around that age. So with feeding, you were breastfeeding at night?
Yeah.
Excellent. And so did you find that learning to feed lying down was a skill you had to master, or did it come easily?
It was really hard. So I didn't, also because my son was premature, I had like really deliberate feeds in the beginning, in the first, 2-3 months. So I would like sit, I would either like get up and like go into a chair, because I was like, had to focus on feeding so much and like, latch and position and all that stuff. And then from there, it turned into just sitting up in bed. And then I think it was about 4 months, and I would experiment with side lying feeding. And then it was about 4 months when it started to work.
It's hard work, hey? Like I found each of my babies, I had to do a slightly different technique to get the hang of it. Like my third baby was by far the easiest. Like she could just you just lay her kind of in that direction and she'd shimmy herself over and she was good to go. Right. But I remember my first guy, I had to latch him sitting up and then lay back with him on my chest and then like turn him to put him on the side. Yeah. And that was the only way that I could get him in the right position to actually feed. I remember with my second guy, I know I did something a bit different, but I can't remember what it was. I just know my third baby, she was the easiest to feed lying down. Nice. But I don't know. I don't know if it's a bit of elastic boobs as well by the time you did it.
Your milk was probably like, I know what to do. But yeah, no, I think that rings a bell for me too. Like latching, sitting up, and then let a lying baby down, and then getting myself down.
Trying to shimmy in.
Yeah. And then after that, it worked quite well. But, and then I was still having to I would feed on one side, and then I would put the baby on the other side to feed on the other side. But then I learned the technique of feeding on both sides, same side.
I'm so jealous. I could never do that. My boobs are too small, so they wouldn't I'd have to pretty much be laying on top of them if I wanted to get that top boob down there. But yeah, I've heard people doing that. It sounds amazing. Yeah, I've seen people doing that with their twins too, like parents with multiples, like figuring out how to do a side stack. Like, wow, that is awesome.
I know. That's a beautiful thing.
Like next level parenting skills right there.
Yeah, that was key, because then I really barely woke up, for feeds that way. And what was I going to say about it? Oh yeah, I did get a lot of milk blebs from that too, which are like, what's the other word for bleb? I think it's not a clogged duct, but
it's when you get like those white marks on your nipple, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I had a lot of those, but I was like, don't care. I'm still doing this.
I'm sleeping. And were they easy enough to clear? Like, how do you clear a bleb?
Yeah, you kind of just like hot compress. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. And so tell me, like, if you've got a really frequently waking babe, but you've figured out this side-lying nursing, sounds like you really embrace contact napping and things like that. Yeah. Did you find you were still having times where you were really struggled, like you were just flat out tired, and what did you do in those times?
Yeah, you know what? I was really committed to my sleep. I went to sleep at 8 o'clock often. The early days, the first 2-3 months, I was exhausted, and my partner was luckily working from home, so he would take baby in the morning very often. So I would sleep in the morning a little bit. But once I did kind of recover from birth, once we were in the 4 or 5 month, I actually did not have very many days of exhaustion, because I would really be, I was lucky enough. I had really flexible work. I could write on my phone for work, while I was napping, but I was really dedicated. I went to sleep early every single night, 8 o'clock. It would be crazy if I went to sleep at 10. And I napped. I was, always napping. So my son and a lot of babies will wake up, for a short period for their first wake, an hour and a half or so. And I would be so excited for that first nap. and have a really, really good sleep then. I don't know if I ever nap twice in a day, but I at least had one really good nap with my son. So I would either nap that morning nap or an afternoon nap. Yeah.
That's amazing. So it was like a really protected kind of thing in your day.
Yeah.
Made a point of being able to nap. It's
Yeah.
fantastic though, having the flexibility of work to be able to actually do that too, especially while you've got a tiny baby.
Yeah.
I know for me, I really struggled to nap. Even when I was really exhausted, day naps were hit and miss, but I never missed the opportunity to rest.
Yes.
Like even if just being able to actually put my body at rest was equally important. And sometimes I'd fall asleep, but I had to get over the pressure of thinking I had to nap, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like rest was what I needed to do. And if I fell asleep, awesome.
Yeah. I love listening to Yoga Nidra recordings. Have you heard of them?
No.
So Yoga Nidra the intention is to be a rest, I don't know if it's an active rest is what it's called. But it's a really, they're lovely recordings. There's a book called Daring to Rest that talks about Yoga Nidra, and the book has recordings online. And I think anybody can access the recordings online. But I had that book before my son, and I love that tool. It's a fantastic way to rest.
I think I need to look at that. That sounds amazing, because I definitely am someone who has to work at resting, because I am very energetic by nature, I guess, but it's more like I get that nervous energy going on, and I need to have that downtime and get my brain to slow down. So that's amazing. Thank you for that tip.
It's a great tool. I will say too, I definitely had a handful of days where I was just completely exhausted, right? Like after a night of like an extra amount of wakings. And I also felt lucky because I would be able to fall back asleep really easily. Like I would be able to wake up and fall back to sleep really, really easily. But sometimes that didn't happen. And I think my best tip for myself during that time was like, this day, nothing has to happen on this day, right? Like
you're allowed to write some of them off, hey, and that can be the best use of time. Take all pressure off. Today is a write-off.
Yeah.
Recovery day.
Completely.
And that's absolutely worthwhile.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I definitely had plenty of those ones. I think it's important for people to know, even when you've got all of your sleep well taken care of, you're still going to have days where you are exhausted. And it's okay to take those downtimes, especially while your babes are busy growing and needing you a lot at night as well. Did you notice any particular patches were really rough for your guy?
So the biggest patch was age 2 at 24 months. It was whoa. I was like, I don't know if it's because I've been supporting sleep for 2 years and I'm like hoping that it's like we're close to like
what is going on here.
But it was wild. It was like waking up in the middle of the night, like, okay, I'm up, all the wakings, and I have to like wrestle him down and be like, it's still nighttime, like let's relax. So it was like a whole thing. And then my son was like resisting naps, resisting bedtime. He was feeding I love one of my friends. We have babies who are the same age. And she texted me once. She's like, is your son feeding like a newborn right now? I was like, that's the best way to say it. So much breastfeeding. And sleep was tricky. Oh yeah. Also like 5 a.m. wakings, which had never happened before. So it was like hard to
brutal.
Go to sleep, waking up in the middle of the night, like, let's go play. And 5 a.m. wakings. Yeah. It was. Wow. Yeah. That was the hardest.
And how did that end?
It eventually faded away. I think it lasted about, I'll say like maybe 6 weeks. It was a whole summer. It was last summer. It was a whole summer of it.
Wow. Yeah. And I bet like the sun being up late and coming up early, it also assists. I know I find that with my guys, like they get the sparrows on, particularly my oldest. I think he's solar powered. if there's any hint of sunshine around, and he's up.
That was it. It was late bedtime, early to rise. It was,
there you go. It's really interesting because I feel like that also speaks to the fact that what is a tough period is very individual. Like we do see clusters of times that seem to be quite challenging for families, but I don't know. I don't think I've met anyone yet who hasn't had a tough spell at some point with their little person. So it's interesting. So if you wouldn't have called the 4-month one your rough one, but the 2-year-old one was there, maybe people with the 4-month one can hold out some hope that the 2-year-old one might give them a miss.
Exactly. Yeah, I was so lucky. I mean, you know what? It's so interesting too to bring it up because the expectations are so important. I would say my son was an amazing sleeper as a baby, right? And that meant he was attached to me 100% of the time, woke up, every as a newborn, like every 3-4 hours, not 4 hours, he'd never make it 4 hours, like about 2-3 hours. But for me, that was amazing because I knew it was normal and there was no, it was just easy. I would feed him, put him back, lie him down, and that was it. I didn't have to do all the things my mom had to do, like pace the halls constantly, take baby for drives to sleep, right? Like I knew how much could be
harder. Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, I just sleep him beside me and feed him every few hours. Great. He sleeps great. So that's interesting to,
It's very true though. And I think that's another thing to keep in mind when people are talking about whether their baby's a good sleeper or a bad sleeper, or are they having problems with sleep. It's all so very personal about what people interpret to be a problem, what isn't a problem, what's a good sleeper, what's a bad sleeper. And it can really vary, I guess, as your expectations grow and change too, because I know that how I would have explained my third baby's sleep compared to my first baby's sleep would be vastly different because I knew what I was expecting from her versus what I thought I should be expecting from him. So my reporting was really different. But now I'm just looked at the time. I can't believe it. We're already coming up to a half an hour for the episode. And so I'd love to hear, do you have a tip you'd like to share with our listeners so they can get some ideas from you?
Yeah. So I think my best tips and what helped me the most and what I think helps parents the most is like to know that you're going to get frustrated, with sleep. It's hard. It's a hard road, but it's also pretty short. Once it's over, once you're on the other side, you're like, okay, I did that. That was great. But I think having tools to, in the moment to process your feelings about it in the moment, I feel like that's my biggest tip. And so, thinking to those, like, oh, baby woke up again, or, oh, I put them down 20 minutes ago and now they're up, right? Like those really intense feelings that can come up about frustration and anger, sadness about how a baby's sleeping. And I think the tools could be different for everyone. So that would be my tip, is like find something that helps you feel better. So for me, it was taking some deep breaths and, having some really nice, like big belly breaths, and thinking like, what, look at my baby, like they need me right now. And I felt really, really lucky to be that person for my baby. And so I could return to that, and that helped me. But I think there's a range of things that help people in those moments. But I think figuring out how to get through those is really, really helpful.
Absolutely. And knowing that feeling frustrated and angry is like, it's normal, like you're human. Of course, you're going to feel those things, but it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. And it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with your baby either. So it's those feelings can sometimes make people feel like they need to urgently, sorry, I've got a fly buzzing me. They feel like they need to urgently take some action to fix things. But it's okay just to have an uncomfortable feeling and not really need to do anything differently.
Yeah. Feelings, uncomfortable feelings, if you kind of just close your eyes and breathe through them and feel them, they last a couple minutes long. If you latch onto them and then start like,
building onto it
and holding onto it, then it will last a lot longer. That's another thing to know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic tip. And I do think that's a really important part of the mindset of actually working our way through sleep with our babes, and not catastrophizing, I guess, when things get tough, because it can really feel like you need to do something and it's really nothing to be done at all. You're already doing all the things you need to do and it will be okay. And it's not always going to be like that. Your baby won't always need you that intensely.
Yes.
It all passes by.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Greer. It's been wonderful hearing your story. And would you be able to, before you go, let us know, where can we find you and your fabulous work?
Yeah, I think the best place to find me is on Instagram at Nurture Neuroscience Parenting. And I have a new website coming out really soon. So we'll have I'll link to that from my Instagram. And I believe it will be nurtureneuroscience.com.
Beautiful. Well, we'll make sure we have all that in the show notes. And if we need to change anything down the track, make sure you let us know so people can, anytime they listen to this episode, they'll be able to find you.
For sure.
And you also, you're busy writing a book. Is that on the horizon, or we've got a while to wait for that one to come out?
We have a little bit of time to wait for that one, probably a year and a half or so. But I'm very excited to share, what I wanted to share right from the beginning on this journey with families. My wish is for all families to really understand how incredible the infant brain is and how much our nurturing care and responsiveness shapes our babies' brains.
Beautiful. Can't wait to read. But thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And for everybody, you can find all those links in our show notes today. And if you've enjoyed our show, we'd love for you to join us as a patron on Patreon, where we can get you into one of our private Facebook groups and you can join the conversation with some bonus exclusive content there as well. All right. Thanks so much for coming on, Greer. Looking forward to seeing what you're up to next. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed the podcast today. The information we discussed was just that, information only. It is not specific advice. If you take any action following something you've heard from our show today, it is important to make sure you get professional advice about your unique situation before you proceed, whether that advice be legal, financial, accounting, medical, or any other advice. Please reach out to me if you do have any questions or if there's a topic you'd really like us to be covering. And if you know somebody who'd really benefit from listening to our podcast, please be sure to pass our name along. Also, check out our free peer support group, the Beyond Sleep Training Project, and our wonderful website, www.littlesparklers.org. If you'd like even more from the show, you can join us as a patron on Patreon, and you can find a link for that in our show notes. If listening is not really your jam, we also make sure we put full episode transcripts on our Little Sparklers website for you to also enjoy, and fully captioned YouTube videos as well on our Little Sparklers channel. So thanks again for listening today. We really enjoy bringing this